everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Alder Hour, your favourite way to end your working day. I'm Matt Alder. I host the Recruiting Future podcast, and I also have the pleasure of hosting the Alder Hour. This show is part of the Purple Acorn Network. If you want to find out more, head over to purpleacornnetwork.com after the show and see all the great new shows that we've added, some really, really great stuff on the network. So you can also follow Purple Acorn on LinkedIn. And this episode is going to be available as a podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. Now, we're broadcasting live, and if you're watching live, please engage with us, write in the comments. We will try and spot your comment and read it out and chat to you just to prove that we're live. But without further ado, I would like to kick off the show by inviting my amazing co-hosts to the screen. And there they are. And Mervyn is here this week. Jocelyn is not with us. So Mervyn, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Max. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. It's the first time we've been on the show together, actually, but obviously we've known each other for a very, very long time. Hi, Rhona, how are you doing?
I am doing great. How are you?
Awesome.
Looks like you have a different background.
I do have a different background today. So I am kind of semi on holiday, but not on holiday. I'm at my parents' house and I'm in their conservatory. Now, I didn't realize until we had a chat about this before we started broadcasting. The conservatory is not a term that's used in quite the same way in the US, is it?
No, it was funny. And that's why I asked you, because we had that whole conversation before. And Alan, our producer, pointed out that we've probably only heard of it in that way from the game of Clue. And I was like, you know what?
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
So.
Yes, exactly. So I'm watching out for someone getting me with lead piping. But I think the US equivalent is probably sunroom or something like that. So
Yes.
So I'm kind of just the back of the house talking. And how's your week been, Rhona? What have you been up to?
It's been a great Monday so far. I'm excited for the show and for all the stuff that we'll talk about.
Awesome. Well, I tell you what, let's kick off straight away and get into points and pints. Okay, so if you've not watched the show before, in this section, we all grab our favourite beverage or an experimental beverage that we've never had before and discuss a couple of headlines that we might have spotted in the news this week. So this week, I have a new one. I have Erdinger, can never kind of say it properly, which is, I think is it Belgian, Mervyn? Do you know this kind of stuff?
Yes.
Belgian, yeah.
I know it, yeah.
It's the non-alcoholic version, which I have had before, which I think is quite nice. Rhona, what do you have for us?
I'm still on my Trader Joe's drinks tour, so I'm trying the sparkling apple cider vinegar. It's like lemon and strawberry apple cider vinegar.
Wow.
So non-alcoholic, of course.
Vinegar.
Yeah.
Wow, that doesn't sound like something you should drink, but interesting. And Merv, what do you have for us?
Well, I'm alcoholic with a glass of Malbec. Cheers.
Oh, a glass of Malbec. And tell us more about the Malbec. Where's it from? What's the
I think it's Argentinian.
I think all Malbecs are Argentinian, right?
I think so. Yeah. Showing up my poor wine knowledge. All right. So let me just pour this. Wish I could say it properly. There we go. Let's see if it's good. Now, weirdly, I hate the alcoholic version of this, but the non-alcoholic version is really nice. So that's good. How's the Trader Joe's?
It's good. It tastes like apple cider vinegar, which isn't bad. I usually take a shot of that every morning, but I don't want my drinks to taste like it's not supposed to taste like the apple cider vinegar, but it does.
Fair enough. And Mervs, how's your Malbec?
It's nice. It's smooth. It's going down well. I don't have it in the morning. It's not a drink I start the day with.
That's probably a good thing.
Yeah, it is. I should explain.
Admit it on live.
I should
LinkedIn.
Explain. Yeah, I'm in the UK. It's like 9:00 in the evening, so it's okay for me to drink it. If you're watching this at 9:00 in the morning,
that's the point of this show, basically.
Yes.
Hello to everyone who's making comments on the side there. We'll try and get some of those up. But Let's move on to the first headline before we disappear into a very long conversation about drinking. Okay, so this one. 4 in 10 new hires say they second guess their decision during onboarding. So, I mean, this didn't really come as much a surprise to me to read this, but basically, more than half the employees that were surveyed in this particular survey felt that onboarding was potentially turning them off from working for the company. Over focused on admin stuff. And also some really interesting things in there about people seeing onboarding as the start of a training journey within the company where they could learn things, particularly AI actually that was mentioned, but actually companies not really sort of delivering on that, not offering a kind of personalized onboarding, and kind of really focusing on admin. There's some stuff in there about Gen Z using AI to answer all the questions because they found them boring and unengaging. And I suppose it wasn't a surprise, but it was slightly disappointing to read that actually, from this survey anyway, I couldn't find the sample size. They might have asked 5 people, but from this survey anyway, onboarding doesn't appear to have become sort of that much more dynamic than it was, say, 10 years ago. What's everyone's take on this? Rhona, what's your take on onboarding and where it might fall short?
Unfortunately, not surprised. I think what happens is that many companies focus so much on their employer branding and like the talent attraction, and then they forget onboarding. It goes like employer branding, spend all the money there, talent attraction, then forget onboarding, and then when there are issues, invest in employee experience type of thing. But that crucial, that's still your first impression. As I was reading this and just everything, I was thinking back to a interview that I had with one of the SHRM Labs platforms. It's called Bytes, and it's like a training that is like TikTok style, and it's for Gen Z, and it's engaging and all of that. And I was thinking, why aren't companies leveraging platforms like that and just technology in general to do more than the regular onboarding is typically this is where you find information in the intranet. This is guys, no one cares about that. Keep the same momentum that you had during recruiting and play with that and keep people engaged through onboarding, because those first 90 days are so important.
Yeah, no, 100%. Mervyn, what's your take on onboarding?
It's vitally important. In fact, you and me, Matt, about 10 years ago more, we wrote a research report purely on onboarding, if you recall.
You're right, yeah, I remember. Yeah.
It was one of the first things we wrote together, I think. Onboarding is hugely important. It's the entry point. It sets people up for success. It sets them up for failure. I mean, I know it's a simple example. If you book a holiday, an expensive holiday, you check in at the hotel, you have a terrible experience, no one's interested in you, you're waiting, no one's carrying your bags for you, and and everything you asked for, I want a room with a balcony, you don't have one, you just want to check out. And onboarding, you've sold the business to somebody. Someone's been through interview. You've basically said, we like you, we want you to join us. And then it so often can go wrong when your entry point to starting your journey with that business is a bit kind of you're not set up for success. Onboarding needs to set somebody up for success from the very beginning. And that's how you bring them in, how you support them, the information you give them, how you help them settle in, the network around you of maybe new colleagues and things, everybody welcoming you, and knowing what you're going to be doing in that first 30, 60, 90 days. It doesn't come as a shock on your second day. Oh, I know we said all that at interview, but actually we want you to do this. Number of times when I was a recruiter, I heard people coming back to me after a week in a job saying I've made an awful mistake. You've got to kind of ensure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting actually, guys. I remember actually before predating that, when I was working for the agency that I was working for, we did another bit of research. We wrote a book called 100 Terrible First Days, which was just people's anecdotes about terrible first days that they'd have. I think it's interesting. I think that the companies that are getting this right, big kind of advantage for them. I've got an interview actually coming up on my podcast this week with the CPO of Zapier. And their onboarding process is this really interesting mix between sort of humans and AI, but they're using the AI to give people highly personalized information, give them the training and the information that they're interested in, and just make the process, certainly the admin part of the process, much more kind of bespoke and engaging than it is. So yes. It's a shame that we're still here, but I think onboarding is certainly something that I think the majority of employers could do a lot better. Cool. So let's move on to the next article, which is, here we go. Nearly half of workers. I'm drinking non-alcoholic beer, and I'm already stumbling my words. Nearly half of workers have considered quitting over employer ethics, a report finds. Now, it's quite a short article, and it's based on a survey of 1,000 US workers. It doesn't say what workers they are or how they chose them. And it sort of seems to cover kind of quite a few things, but I've sort of picked some sort of highlights out of it. So workers expressed concerns about employers' actions not aligning with its established values. At the same time, 36% said they'd stayed quiet about unethical activity to protect their jobs. And then 43% said they'd seen favoritism in things like promotion or raises. So there's kind of a mix here between individual managers doing things that people don't necessarily agree with, but actually, overall companies, being big on values and all these kind of things, but actually not living up to them. And again, it's not really a surprise, unfortunately, but it's obviously an issue because it's come out in this survey. There's also it kind of also really references the fact that it becomes an employer brand issue and harder to employ people. Mervyn, you strike me as someone who will have some interesting takes on this one. So company ethics, company values, not living up to them. Tell us about it.
Well, it's important. It's quite often people have made decision to join a company based on interviews. As we know, historically, the company puts on a great show. We're like this, we're like that. It's fine-tuned the people they meet along the way. And you start there and find it's nothing like that. And I think that it's a shame that this is still happening, because I would have thought, certainly with the advent of social media, as we mentioned before, but since then, with LinkedIn, it's so easy for people to actually publicly name and shame, and to say, people aren't worried nowadays. Gen Z aren't worried about saying, I started working for blah, 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 and it's been awful. Or, all the promises I was made, weren't there. You need to be careful if you're interviewing here. People aren't scared to say things like that now. Back in the day, we'd have said, you can't do that. You'll be unemployable. No one will touch you. But actually, you need to showcase the companies that people should be wary of. So I think it's a story as old as time, unfortunately. Company puts on a great show to bring you in. And when you get there, you find that ethically, it's the behaviours it tolerates probably aren't in line with its principles. And I think it's sad. Certainly in kind of sales and creative environments, we've probably all come across people who are holding on to their job, not because they're a great employee, but because they manage the biggest account or something, or the biggest client likes them or something. The companies hire people and retain people for a range of reasons. Usually it's because they're good at their job, but sometimes it isn't. So I think it's a shame that this still goes on. It's a shame there's not more transparency, particularly in the age of, as I say, post-social media, the age of AI. That will be interesting as that develops. If you can go on to ChatGPT or whatever and saying, I'm going on interview to the Alder Hour, what's it like to work for? And it's kind of
Great. It's great.
yeah, yeah. Well, you know what I mean. Yeah, it will be, and they'll probably, it will come up with, it's got this reputation, that it's number 6 on the list of weekly podcasts, but we have seen reports of this and this. So I think, again, people will have more information at their fingertips, but it's a shame that it still goes on, but it's not a surprise.
Rhona, what do you think? I mean, should companies just be more honest about their lack of values?
Yeah, I mean, I'm team like your employer branding isn't supposed to be the shiny thing. It's supposed to be the reality. Your culture isn't what you say it is. It's really what happens at your company, the behaviors that you reward, all of that. And like the days of not or of being able to hide behind these things are gone. Like just TikTok. Search for the name of the company that you're interviewing with, and you'll see the good, the bad, the ugly that everyone's talking about, whether it's their customers, their employees, all of these things. So it's like those days are gone. But like Mervyn was saying, this has been around. I was looking back because I remember an article from like 2-3 years ago that was shared all over LinkedIn, like what to do when you've been catfished by a job. Because it's like that's literally how people feel. Because you go through the entire thing and it's all this best behavior, and then when you get to the first day, you're like, oh, this is what's really happening. That's been happening for way too long, and it really needs to stop. And I think the only way that it's going to stop is by more employees, and thank goodness for Gen Z not being shy about this, but more employees talking about the reality of what's happening. And like Mervyn said, people are going to be able to search and have like a full picture of it. And I love it. As a recruiter, I used to love it when people would ask me, hey, I saw this on Glassdoor, or I saw this on TikTok about the company. Can you expand on that? Like what happened there, good or bad? I love those conversations, and I think companies need to get more comfortable with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, yeah, I just hope the days of pretending that you have values that are X, Y, and Z that you never live up to are kind of are just going to kind of end, because it is, it is quite ridiculous. I could talk about this one all day. We might come back to it a little bit later, actually. But for now, it is a bit of a situation, so we should move on to the situation room.
Hello. Uh, as you'll gather, I'm not Jocelyn King. I'm Mervyn Dinnen. I'm stepping in for Jocelyn today. And, well, what's the situation we're talking about? I think we know. I think we can guess. Astronomer CEO Andy Byron resigns following viral Coldplay kiss cam drama. Oh dear, when business becomes tabloid news, you know there's something up. We know that the cameras at the Coldplay concert caught 2 people, a gentleman with grey hair and a slightly younger woman, cuddling and kissing. And I'm sure that people who were watching the cam at the gig were thinking, oh, isn't that lovely? And wouldn't have realized, as we soon found out afterwards, that that was the CEO of a large tech company with his head of HR. Now, I do have a take, and hopefully Matt will join me in a moment. One thing I would say is that relationships between people who work in the same company is not earth-shatteringly new. I started in the workplace, as you can probably tell from looking at me, a long time ago. And, I mean, when you were first finding out about the company you're working for and you were talking to some of the people, what's this like? What's that like? You would hear stories say, well, Mr. So-and-so is really good. His secretary is really lovely. I mean, there are lots of rumors that those two are having a bit of an affair, but, we're not sure, but it could be. And we always had tales of that. You always had couples being seen, out having lunch together in a little restaurant miles away from the office, so they didn't think they could be seen. And people leaving together, and oh God, are you leaving now? What train are you getting? Oh, I'm getting the same train. Why don't we go together? Knowing it's been prearranged. So this kind of stuff, particularly in office type workplaces, has been going on since the beginning of time. I would be really controversial and say since the beginning of women joining the workplace, when it was just all men, you see, it wasn't like that. No, I'm joking. Jocelyn, Rhona, I could see you shaking your head there. So it's, to me, yes, the way it happened was probably a bit of a shock. And we love on social media to amplify everything as outrage. But in some respects, as wrong as it is, there are two very injured people in this, a wife and a husband. As you know, it's not a shock to me. It's nothing new. Now, I don't know if that's a good take or not, but that's my view.
Okay. Right. So, first of all, even I mean the we kind of spotted this. Obviously, this only happened about 4 days ago or something like that, and I think we kind of decided then we were going to put it on the show. So I don't think we could have anticipated in the last 4 days just how big and much how big and how debated this particular story would be. My my 9-year-old nephew asked me this afternoon if I'd heard about the man at the Coldplay gig. So, really, it almost feels a bit weird talking about it because everyone has sort of talked about it at some point and the rights and the wrongs of it and had a take on it, and people have had the take on other people's take on it and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I think from the various different angles that we can talk about it, I think what you say there, Merv, makes sense. It's I think sometimes you kind of read what people have written about this, and it's like the first time anyone has had any kind of affair or any kind of relationship with someone at work. There's obviously some very big issues behind this, though, in terms of company policy about relationships, the fact it was the CHRO and the implications of that, and also the fact that this guy is a CEO and has basically generated a huge amount of very probably unwanted publicity for his company. So, I think it's probably right that he's resigned just for that reason, along with everyone else, along with everything else. So yeah, it's I don't think anything's kind of blown up this big on social media for quite some time, which also seems slightly. Seems kind of very wrong considering all the things that we could be talking about work and in the world. We're sort of discussing, two people we don't know caught in a fleeting moment at a Coldplay gig. I think the fact is Coldplay probably has a lot to do with it. They're a much maligned band, but they're much bigger than I think people realise as a kind of a global thing. So yeah, I mean it kind of is what it is. I'm not sure that we can really learn massive lessons about business or HR or anything from this. I mean, I've seen people writing articles claiming that it's the end of HR as we know it. HR's reputation is finished because of this particular thing. So I don't think we can take very many business lessons for this. I think it's a fairly kind of cut and dried situation from a business perspective. It's not something that CEOs and CHROs should be seen to be doing anywhere. You can obviously argue about the social media impact of it, and also I think that it's kind of appalling that other people have been dragged into this, and pictures of their kids have been put online, and it's just become a thing that people are sort of a feeding frenzy of stuff. But yeah, I mean that would really be my my take on it. I don't think there are any deep and meaningful lessons that we could learn from this about business beyond the obvious. I mean, what do you think?
I would agree. I would agree wholeheartedly. I think the fact that it's a mixture of technology and HR has got the HR technology world agog. And as platforms like LinkedIn are heavily weighted towards, certainly those are two sectors it's heavily weighted towards in terms of its content and the people on it and stuff. That is that's why I think it's blown up in our worlds so much. And as you say, it's crossed that. I've got, my wife was talking about it, people who wouldn't normally, I've seen people online who aren't part of HR or tech or anything talking about it. Everybody's got a view. But I love the open to work thing. I hadn't seen that before. The open to work sticker on him, his headshot there. I think it's just because of as you say, Coldplay, HR technology. It's blown up, and it's obviously made other news channels as well, because again, Coldplay. It took place at a big concert. Their reaction to being caught on camera and stuff. It's one of those stories that it's going to be on. Have I got news for you? Sorry. Listeners outside the UK might not know what I'm talking about there, but it's going to be on topical quiz shows around, certainly around the UK and US. Do you remember when, and things like that. But I don't know there's any. Well, the only lesson for HR from that is if you shouldn't get involved in these kind of relationships at work, when you're in charge of all the people there.
Yeah, and I think that I do think that there is some discussion around that social media piece and the effect it has on, people's lives and all that kind of stuff. But it's not quite new. I remember it's not quite the same story, but I remember when I was at university, I was supposed to go to a really important lecture, and I went and sat in the audience of a daytime TV discussion show instead, which unfortunately I got back to the university to go and tell my lecturer that I was ill and I couldn't make the lecture, and someone shouted up the stairs, "I saw you on TV this morning. That was brilliant." So, I was caught out as well in slightly different circumstances, basically. And
did it make the front page though? Did it make the headlines?
No, it didn't. I went to see Coldplay once as well, but nothing like this. Nothing like this happened. There we are. I think this has been kind of done to death. I think we'll talk about it from a different angle a little bit later, but I don't think there's much else to say really. So, Mervyn, thank you. Thank you so much for bringing that one to us. And I think we have an absolute rock star guest waiting for us. Hey, Laurie, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm terrific, my friend. Are you really going to make me follow all of that?
Of course I am. I have to say, I love your job title on the thing there. That's amazing. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I mean it sincerely. We have been, colleagues and friends for a very long time, and it's fun to work again with you. So thanks for having me today.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. So just in case there is anyone watching who has not come across your enormous body of fantastic work, can you just start by introducing yourself and telling everyone what you do?
Sure. My name is Laurie Ruettimann. I'm a writer and speaker and podcaster, and I focus on the world of work. And for many years, I worked in human resources and was no good at it and had to find a different way. And so I went on a path of kind of analyzing, doing research, but it all intersected with the world of social media. So I worked at big brands many people know, like Pfizer and Monsanto, and I was a writer at the conference board. But I've also appeared on sketchy chat shows and been all over the internet for many years. But my belief is that work is over fundamentally as we know it, and there's no fixing work. Like, I think that's misplaced energy, and that we fix the world by fixing ourselves and focusing on our communities. And there are all sorts of ways we can take that conversation, whether it's through the rise of AI or universal basic income. But the way we do work today in 2025 has a shelf life of about 18 months, and things are going to start to radically change. And will be bumpy for many, and hopefully at the other side of it, something glorious will come out of this.
So, let's start there. Just tell us a little bit. What do you mean by that? What is it that's going to change?
Yeah. Well, currently we're in this, I think, war with technology, right? Where we've got this rise of what we're calling artificial intelligence through a lot of different modalities. And it is currently displacing workers. And it's displacing workers because workers are expensive. And as much as people like to say people are our greatest assets in a company, people are the greatest problem. We know this, right? I mean, they're human. And it takes a really wonderful and patient CEO and board of directors and leadership team to be able to factor in the cost of doing business with all the human complexities. But there are financial pressures right now from markets and from investors saying we're focused on productivity, we're focused on revenue. So there is this drive to replace people with technology, and we're not being honest about that. But what will happen, I believe, is that there will be pressure on governments and nonprofits to come up with an answer. How do we solve for the interest of people and passion and purpose in this world if we decouple it from employment, if we decouple it from income? And that, I think, is the greatest challenge and the greatest, I think, opportunity of a lifetime. And that's what I'm excited about.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm completely, I'm completely with you on that. And it's,
I mean,
it's
Matt,
almost
I don't know how it is over in the UK, but right now here in America and in many countries, there's this drive to almost create businesses that are functioning as a B2B economy without people and using cryptocurrencies and currencies that are outside the norm, right? And so the question becomes, is that the future of what's happening here? B2B interactions focusing well above humanity and a currency that you and I necessarily don't have access to. What happens when someone breaks an arm? What happens if
exactly.
someone just wants to learn about poetry or history, right? We're going to need caregivers, educators, people who can keep the human story alive and keep the human people alive. How do we care for them? How do we pay for that? How do we get people to buy wonderful things and create an economy? Well, there's an answer, and that answer is universal basic income. So it's like complex and interesting and dynamic, and we're only just scratching the surface of it. That's what excites me.
Yeah, because I think what I was going to say is that it's almost shocking that more governments and there aren't talking about this. There aren't more conversations about this. There appears to be this kind of state of collective denial that anything is going to happen or it's going to it'll just create more jobs. And I think there's always interesting kind of parallels that people throw out. Well, remember the Industrial Revolution, and what happened with that was it created more jobs. And if you dig into it, there's this, and I'm not a historian, but there was this kind of time, I think they called it the Engels pause, where it didn't work out like that. There were displaced agricultural workers, like living in slums in the cities, and it took a long time before that kind of corrected itself, and and it kind of moved into the world that people describe when they say, technology just creates more jobs. So, there's some really interesting historical parallels there as well.
And, there are people like Sam Altman and Bill Gates and many big thinkers out there, even Melinda Gates, right? And all of these foundations that are currently thinking about what is the true meaning of our existence. And for hundreds of years now, since the Industrial Revolution, we have been told and we have been taught and we've been encouraged to believe that our work is our worth. And that's brought a lot of benefit to humanity. We've put people on the moon. I believe we've put people on the moon, and we've gone to space, and we're making great strides with medical research. But as we start to think about the why behind humanity, if technology can do a lot of this really important work, what's left for us to do? And suddenly we start to see the breaking of the way we think about earning an income, pursuing education, being in community with one another. And we are going to need governments, educational institutions, all sorts of researchers to come together and really rethink what does it mean to care for one another and create a safety net so that those who just want to foster kittens like me can do that, but we're not poor, or those who are displaced from 20th and early 21st century jobs don't get just driven over in this new world. How do we care for one another but still encourage people to be bright and smart and innovative? That is the challenge that we're going to face. And I actually think when we talk about the future of HR, there's a role for people like us who think about production and productivity and purpose and meaning to think about where humans fit in the future of the world. But you're right, governments are not talking about this. And so therefore, what's the incentive to really think differently?
Yeah, and I think you mentioned education there, and I think that's it's kind of another key area. And I know that it's similar in other countries, but certainly in Britain, we still have an education system where the core curriculum was invented to train people to be administrators in the British Empire.
Not much better over here. I mean,
and it's not really really moved on, and certainly doesn't keep up with where we are. So it's going to be really interesting times. Just to kind of sort of, I suppose, just to get back, just to kind of sort of stick right in the here and now, because there was something that I kind of spotted you writing about that I wanted to talk about. So over the last sort of couple of days, I noticed that. Well, first of all, I noticed that you're doing an event with Scott Stratton. Is that coming up, or have I missed it?
Yeah, it's coming up on Wednesday, where we are going to talk about the inhuman way that AI is being shoehorned into human resources processes and policies and platforms. So yeah, Scott Stratton and I will be on LinkedIn at 1:30 Eastern on Wednesday talking about that.
And I'm certainly going to watch that, because I'm obviously a big fan of you, big fan of Scott as well, and the work that he does. But it was interesting because I kind of, before I noticed that he was diving into lots of posts that people were writing about HR on LinkedIn with a bit of an AI reality check. And I kind of noticed that you were kind of writing about it. You wrote that article about AI fluency in HR. Give us your kind of take on all of this. What's going on with HR and AI? What should people be paying attention to? What should people just be kind of ignoring? What's going on?
Well, the answer is we don't know. Right? I mean, that is the only fair, honest answer. Where we are in the world of AI is just at the very beginning. We are very early. We are crawling out of the swamp right now, right out of the miasma. And for anybody to stand in front of us as a function, as a leader, and say, this is where we need to be with AI, or this is the future, they have no right to do that, because they don't have any answers. What we have are little experiments happening right now, often at the cost of workers, often for the benefit of short-term profitable gains. And we're not being very honest about that. So there are some good things that are happening around automation and digitization that were predicted 10 years ago, but that's not really AI. Those are just efficiency gains with the current technology that we have. So I think we've got some misuse of language happening right now. But the future of AI, of artificial intelligence, is unwritten and actually unproven. So for anybody to sit here and say that they have an answer to this is insane. And I actually go to a report written by JP Morgan Chase, signed off by Jamie Dimon, their CEO, who said the products and services being built with AI right now are a security threat to more than just the individual platform, to ecosystems, because they're being written so quickly, so fast, without an understanding of the way that AI should be developed, that there are all these backdoor ways for nefarious people to get in and steal data. So the answer is nobody knows anything. We're just throwing spaghetti at the wall. And for leaders to stand up and say HR needs HR fluency, HR needs critical thinking skills. HR needs to be able to ask questions around project management and cybersecurity and safety. HR needs to be brave enough to say, I know this sounds boring and compliance driven, but this is really important because this is about safety. So that's how I feel pretty strongly about that. And I just, I'm so offended when anybody pretends to have an answer about the future of work and the future of AI and HR.
Yeah, no, I think that's I think that's kind of a really good point. I think that I suppose there's two bits. I think the critical thinking is crucial, and unfortunately, what tends to happen with a lot of technology, particularly with AI, with HR, but with other departments as well, you get this kind of like, well, we're not technical, so we don't think we can really, comment on it. And actually, you need people in the room. You need dissenting voices in the room. You need people to kind of take that, that kind of other, that other viewpoint, don't you?
Yeah, and I'm actually influenced by Matt Charney, who wrote a really beautiful article about where we are with AI and ethics, because I think there's a role for HR to ask critical thinking skills about the way that the platforms affect and influence the state of work, affect and influence employees, right? But I think what is happening for both technical and non-technical people, so people who are engineers, developers, and HR professionals, is that we're all being caught up in the marketing hype. And we all look to others as experts when truly no one is an expert. And so really getting down to the basics of what makes for a good work process. What makes for efficient work? What makes for work where there is no moral injury to employees, right? Those are the, I think, 101 questions that we need to always ask before we can pretend to ask and even have the right to go any further. So I don't know, I think we're all caught up in this marketing hype cycle, and frankly, I'm a little sick of it. So I don't know, tell me why I'm wrong though. Am I wrong?
Yeah. I don't think you are wrong. I think it's I think it's a complex situation, because I think that there is a huge amount of marketing hype out there. People take things seriously. Perhaps they shouldn't take things seriously. I think people sometimes cover up their lack of understanding by quoting some of the marketing hype. So I think that is one issue. I do think the other issue, though, is that sometimes people can look at all that marketing hype and say, this is just rubbish. It's another fad. I'm not interested. And then that comes back to your earlier point about the fundamental changes at work and actually missing that that's happening. So I think it's kind of nuanced from that perspective. I do think, though.
Oh, I don't mean to interrupt, but I do want to say, this brings up an interesting point for me that I've been saying now for over 20 years. HR sits at the intersection of work, power, politics, and money. And if we ask good questions, and if we pay attention to trends, and if we are historians in those areas, we're going to be fine and be able to apply those skills to future trends within AI. But the problem is we show up as theater majors, or I have a degree in creative writing, right? We show up with this liberal arts background and we want to play business person. And to your point, we often are not confident, and we adopt the language around us of marketing, of, these sales tropes. And we don't, I think, flex our critical thinking skills enough to be stewards for the people that are actually trusting us to be stewards. So work, power, politics, money, if you solve for that, or if you at least keep that in mind, I think that will hold you in good stead in this conversation.
So just to kind of finish off with, let's just talk quickly about ethics, because we were talking about ethics at the start of the show, and you have a course on sort of ethical HR leadership. So just give us your take on, where do ethics fit into all of this?
Well, it's a really good question. I think there is, and so again, I'm going to quote Matt Charney, who just wrote this really brilliant article, and I hope somebody can link to it in the notes here today. But there is no universal standard of ethics, right? And so we have what are commonly defined ways of treating people. Some people use the golden rule, some people use other frameworks from philosophers. But I think for me, really understanding that the be-all, end-all is not profitability, it's not revenue, but it's like putting the human at the center of the equation. If we can keep the person at the center of this, we're going to be in good stead. So in my LinkedIn Learning course on HR and ethics, I actually ask people to be brave enough to put themselves in situations and think about how they would react. For example, put yourself up on the Jumbotron in your worst moment, when you've said something unkind to your child, or when you've been dismissive of an elder, like your parents, or when you've done something wrong at work, you've not been a good ally. Could you survive that Jumbotron moment? Well, that feeling of shame, that feeling of regret is something you should hold close to your heart in human resources, because that's who you're dealing with. You're dealing with people at their lowest moments. And in that lowest moment, really remember the humanity and try to find a way out for all people involved.
Laurie, thank you so much I could talk to you about another half an hour, but unfortunately it's called the Alder Hour. So
by the way, I miss you. I'll come see you soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk again. Let's talk again
absolutely.
soon.
Be well. Be safe.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. So much stuff there, but brilliant. Thank you. And let's move on to trending or ending.
So let's keep talking about the Astronomer CEO and the CHR Coldplay concert scandal, because why not? But more specifically, I want to talk about the content frenzy that followed. Like by now, most of us have seen it. We've talked about it. We know what the situation was. The narrative really escalated fast. Workplace affair, leadership ethics, HR complicity, you name it. It was talked about on every social media platform. And LinkedIn, it exploded. But here's what I really want to talk about: the brands that jumped in. Because yes, some of the memes were clever. Yes, it was tempting to weigh in when everyone's talking about something. But there's a fine line between commentary and just like being an opportunist. And I saw brands post about not capitalizing on someone else's worst day, but they were still using the trend to position themselves as morally superior, right? Make no mistake, that was still capitalizing. And let's be honest, when that video first dropped, the only thing that we knew was that two humans looked awkward when the camera landed on them. That's all we knew. We didn't know if they were violating any company policies. We didn't know if they were in open marriages. We didn't know anything except what it looked like. So yeah, it turns out that the backlash may have been warranted, but the memes, the hot takes, the brand content, all of that came before the facts were confirmed, and that's dangerous. I get it. Your social media manager is desperate for engagement. Your CEO wants to be relevant, and everyone's chasing that viral moment. But there's something to think about. When you post in real time, especially as a company, you're not just participating in a trend, you're taking a stance. You're placing your brand values next to someone else's pain. And if you get it wrong, you don't just look careless, you look performative. And don't even get me started on the journalists that reported on this and basically just parroted what everyone else was saying. Not a single article that I saw from major media outlets included any type of actual investigative journalism, just plain straight up gossip. I think we've lost the plot. So, is this kind of reactive posting trending or ending? The temptation is definitely trending, but the trust that you lose when you jump on gossip without facts, that might really be what ends your credibility. What do you think, Matt?
I completely agree with you. I think that the some of the stuff that was published was very sketchy from companies that should know better. I have a particular hatred of people trying to draw business lessons from things where we don't have all the information. We really don't know what's going on. That I just find that particularly annoying. I think the journalist one is spot on as well. It's like everyone felt they had to report this, but no one actually reported it. No one, as you say, provided kind of anything different. So yeah, I think it's we've kind of seen it happen before, and unfortunately, it's going to happen again. But I think with this one, because of the HR angle, it's very much been in our world and on all of our LinkedIns all week. And I'm really not sure that many of the takes were useful. And I think that, I think when I said with Mervyn earlier about the post about this is the end of HR as we know it. We might be approaching the end of HR, but I don't think it's because of a Coldplay concert. But also just the disinformation, so the misidentification of one of the bystanders as being part of the HR team of this company, which they weren't. And then, I saw articles from people talking about that and, this company culture must be terrible. And, how can you stand by and watch your colleagues do that? And the poor person who wasn't even involved in this, having their name dragged around the internet is appalling. I think that, there's an exception, but there is, in terms of brands jumping on this kind of thing, there are, certainly in the UK, there are a couple of brands who are consumer brands who are kind of well known for having having an amusing take on a particular story like this, but making it all about them. So, and it's kind of like always kind of goes down well in the UK. I'm not sure it goes down well anywhere else. But to give you an example, one of them is Ryanair. Anyone who's not familiar with Ryanair, you're very lucky. They're a low-cost airline, a low-cost European airline based out of Ireland. a big kind of presence in the UK, fly all over Europe. Very well known for not being very nice to their customers in the kind of the as a way of cutting costs, but they're very kind of self-aware on social media. So they put out a post and it said something like Ryanair and Coldplay separating couples since 2006 or something, because Ryanair are kind of legendary for moving people who have booked seats together to different parts of the plane. So it's almost kind of like they're becoming part of the joke themselves. And I thought that was okay because it's kind of in keeping with what they do on social. But the rest of it, it can just get in the bin, quite frankly.
I was so surprised to see some brands jump on it, and it was just unnecessary. And then the people who were trying to like relate it back to a business lesson or whatever, I'm like, we don't even know what's really happening. How are you extracting a lesson from it? What about trying to find out what really happened? And also, I just really think that the HR part of it, because everyone loves to hate HR, is really what made it blow up, because that same day, another even more scandalous, if you ask me, situation happened at work, on video, all of that. It was all over TikTok, but it didn't migrate over to the rest of social media like this one did. I think the fact that it was like an HR thing, and like the other one wasn't reported on CNN or any of these things. People just love to hate us.
And also, I think people love to hate Coldplay as well. So the kind of the jokes about, oh my god, they've been outed at being a Coldplay concert is kind of part of the is part of the picture here as well. And we kind of move through phases with this very quickly. There was the, oh, have you seen this phase? Then there was the amusing meme phase. Then there was the business lesson phase. Then there was the people posting about other people posting, but still posting the pictures phase. It just became very meta very quickly. And then here we are talking about people posting about people posting about people posting about all this kind of stuff. And then, presumably by next week, apart from in clip shows and reviews of the year, it'll be pretty much forgotten by anyone who wasn't directly involved. But yeah, it's kind of we seem to have gone through the cycles of this very, very quickly.
Yeah, because we're on a totally different take today. I don't even want to, like, it really just needs to end. I think companies and brands especially just need to move on, because at the end of the day, they could potentially be setting themselves up for even lawsuits. Because I mean, if it were me and you're like spreading gossip and things that aren't true, especially like the supposed HR person that wasn't even them, it's like, you participating in all of this, now you have memes that's all out there. Like, really be serious.
And I mean, so do you think that brands should get involved in anything like this at all? Because there's obviously a huge competition out there to kind of cut through, to be relevant. The algorithms are vicious. The advertising's expensive. Jumping on these bandwagons sometimes can get them a bit of visibility. What would your advice be to brands around this type of thing?
Make sure that if you're jumping on a trend, you're actually working from facts, because at the end of the day, what you're putting out there, what's out there on social media, can be used in a lawsuit if you're disparaging or saying things that aren't true about people. So just be careful. Don't let your social media intern wild on a trend without really thinking about what are the implications. And if it has absolutely nothing to do with your brand and what you do, probably sit it out.
And does that extend to, because I know if you look at any, social media calendar, there's always, today is National Pie Day. Today is the something day. And, there's this kind of sense that social media managers have to, kind of jump on these trends as they happen. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? What do you think?
Definitely, you should jump on trends as they happen, as long as you're not opening yourself up to potential lawsuits by gossiping about someone. I think the main issue that I'm talking about is the whole gossiping about people, because there was memes, there were posts, there were lessons, articles about things that weren't even that you don't even know at that point if they were true or not. People should have spent more time investigating if they really wanted to talk about it and not just gossiping. I think as a brand, you shouldn't be participating in gossip.
And to to kind of put you on the spot a little bit, you'd have to name names. What was the worst one you saw? What was the one you were really like that should not be up there?
I saw so many. I don't even specifically remember one, but it was like meme after meme after meme about the whole, we've got you. I even saw people say like, don't worry, at our place, this would never happen. How do you know? How do you not know that your CEO isn't sleeping with your CHRO right now? How do you not know that? Like that type of thing is what I'm saying. It's like, ugh, I don't know. Yeah.
You're right. Actually, there was a little bit of kind of values, virtues. I can't even say it. I had non-alcoholic beer again, honestly, virtue signaling out there, basically. And it's interesting, actually, because that comment from Jamie just flashed up, which I saw earlier about the values. Company values should reflect the day-to-day and be aspirational, and companies have to be clear and demonstrate that they're honest. And I think that really ties in with this kind of discussion. It's like, as Laurie says, it's like everyone has their own jumbotron moment, or every company does. So be careful what you wish for, basically.
Yeah. And also, are you really posting about this and acting as the big, like the superior, morally superior person? There's some scandals at every company. I've always said it. There's BS at every single company, and your employees could very easily just go and comment on your post about the reality of what's happening there. And I hope it happens.
Yeah, exactly. I say, completely ties in with the conversation that we were having earlier. Well, thank you, Rhona, for bringing that to us. I would imagine that we'd all moved on by next week, but who knows how the news cycle is gonna play out. So there we go. We're at the end of another Alder Hour. My thanks to Rhona. My thanks to Mervyn for being with us. Have you finished your Malbec yet, Mervyn?
No, there's a couple of mouthfuls left.
Oh, it's good.
And the rest to celebrate the end of the show.
Presumably. Yeah, well, exactly. These things are worth celebrating. Big thanks to Laurie for being an amazing guest, and thanks to Alan, because that's 2 weeks in a row I've said thanks to our producer. We normally forget him, but there we are. So if you want to... did I just hear a seagull? Oh, apologies about the seagulls. There are seagulls just flying over this conservatory. I hope none of them have lead piping. Anyway, so lots of great shows on Purple Acorn, HR Morning Show, From the Desk, My First Job, From X to Z with Mervyn, who's right there, and loads more being added. So head over to the purpleacornnetwork.com or head over to their LinkedIn page to find out more. You can find this as a podcast on Spotify, Apple, and anywhere else where you listen to quality podcasts. We will be back next week. If you want to listen to my longer form interviews, then check out Recruiting Future. Alder Hour is back next Monday. This is Matt Alder, clocking out.